It was a crisp Tuesday morning, and the air was tinged with the coolness of late October. Ethan Harper parked his rusty Ford pickup in the student lot of Greenwood High School. The 16-year-old leaned back in his seat and adjusted the bright red MAGA hat that rested snugly on his head. The hat had been a gift from his grandfather, a proud Marine who had fought in Vietnam. "Never be afraid to stand for what you believe in," his grandfather had told him the day he gave Ethan the hat, "even when it's unpopular." Ethan replayed those words in his head as he grabbed his backpack and stepped out of the truck. The school day loomed ahead like any other, but little did he know that this particular day would change everything. Ethan walked through the front doors, nodding at a few classmates who glanced his way. Some looked at the hat and quickly turned away, while others whispered to each other. Ethan wasn't particularly social. He had a few close friends, but generally kept to himself. He didn't expect the hat to cause a stir. To him, it was just a symbol of his beliefs, a connection to his family's values. By third period, however, Ethan began to notice the atmosphere shift. In history class, he sat quietly as Mr. Dawson lectured about the civil rights movement. A girl 2 rows over leaned toward her friend, her voice just loud enough for Ethan to hear. "I can't believe he's wearing that hat," she whispered. "It's disgusting." Ethan felt his cheeks flush, but kept his eyes fixed on his notebook. He scribbled aimlessly, pretending not to hear. When the bell rang, he packed his things quickly and headed to his next class. As he walked down the hallway, he overheard more snippets of conversation. "Is he serious with that thing? What a jerk. People like him don't belong here." Ethan kept his head down, his grip tightening on the strap of his backpack. He didn't understand why everyone was so upset. It was just a hat, a simple red cap with white letters. To him, it represented pride in his family, in hard work, and in the values his grandfather had instilled in him. By the time lunch rolled around, Ethan's stomach was in knots. He grabbed a tray of spaghetti and made his way to his usual table by the windows. His best friend, Mason, was already there, scrolling through his phone. "Man, you've got guts," Mason said as Ethan sat down. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, setting his tray down. Mason gestured toward the hat. "People are talking about it. Jessica posted a picture of you on Instagram. It's blowing up." Ethan frowned and pulled out his phone. Sure enough, there it was, a picture of him, head bowed slightly, wearing the hat. The caption read, "MAGA hat in 2024? Really? We don't need this kind of hate at Greenwood High?" The post already had dozens of comments, some defending him, but most ridiculing or condemning him. Ethan felt a pit form in his stomach. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "It's the internet," Mason said. "What do you expect?" Before Ethan could respond, a group of students walked by their table. Jessica, the senior class president, stopped and pointed directly at Ethan. "Are you seriously wearing that?" she demanded, her voice sharp and cutting. "What's your problem?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone even. "That hat is my problem," Jessica snapped. "It represents racism, sexism, everything wrong with this country. People like you shouldn't be allowed to wear that here." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It's just a hat. I'm not doing anything to anyone." "It's a symbol of hate," Jessica shot back. "Take it off." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You don't get to tell me what to wear." Jessica scoffed and turned on her heel. "Unbelievable," she muttered. As she walked away, she pulled out her phone, snapping another picture. Ethan stared down at his tray, his appetite gone. Around the cafeteria, he could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on him. By fifth period, Ethan's phone was buzzing constantly. Notifications from Instagram, Snapchat, and text messages flooded his screen. He ignored them, trying to focus on his math assignment. But the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. "Hey, MAGA boy," someone whispered from the back of the class. Ethan clenched his jaw but didn't turn around. "Why don't you go back to your Trump rally?" Another voice chimed in, louder this time. The teacher, Mrs. Callahan, frowned. "That's enough," she said. She glanced at Ethan, her expression unreadable. "Ethan, Principal Morton wants to see you. Take your things." Ethan packed his notebook and walked to the principal's office, his heart pounding. The hallways felt longer and quieter than usual, and by the time he arrived, he was practically shaking. Principal Morton was seated at her desk, her expression calm but serious. The bright red MAGA hat rested on the desk in front of her, like an exhibit in a courtroom. "Ethan, have a seat," she said. Ethan sat down, his palms sweaty. "Is this about my hat?" "Yes," Principal Morton said. "Several students and teachers have expressed concerns about it. Ethan, do you understand why this is an issue?" "I don't," Ethan said honestly. "It's just a hat." Principal Morton leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk. "Ethan, symbols carry weight. This particular symbol has become associated with divisive politics and, to some, hatred. Whether or not that's your intent, it's creating a disruption." "It's not what it means to me," Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. "My grandfather gave it to me. It's about standing up for what I believe in." "I understand that," Principal Morton said, "but we have to consider the impact on the school community. Several students have reported feeling unsafe because of the hat." Ethan stared at her, incredulous. "Unsafe? I didn't do anything to anyone." Principal Morton sighed. "Ethan, this isn't about punishing you. It's about maintaining a safe and inclusive environment for everyone. I'm afraid I have no choice but to suspend you for 3 days." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Suspended? For a hat? That's not fair." "I understand that you're upset," she said, "but the decision is final." When Ethan got home, his parents were waiting for him in the living room. His mom, fiery and outspoken, was already on the phone with a local news station. His dad, usually calm and reserved, was pacing back and forth, his arms crossed. "They suspended you for wearing a hat?" his mom said, after Ethan explained what had happened. "This is outrageous." "They can't do that," his dad added. "It's a violation of free speech." Ethan's mom nodded, her jaw set. "We're going to fight this." By the next morning, the story was all over social media. News outlets picked it up, and reporters gathered outside Greenwood High, interviewing students and parents. Protesters soon followed, holding signs that read, "Free speech for all," and "Hate has no place here." The school became the epicenter of a national debate about freedom of expression and the boundaries of inclusivity. Ethan stayed home, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. His phone buzzed constantly with messages, some supportive, others hateful. Friends reached out to tell him they were proud of him, while strangers sent threats and insults. The Greenwood School Board called an emergency meeting to address the controversy. The auditorium was packed with students, parents, teachers, and community members. Protesters gathered outside, waving MAGA flags and anti-hate signs. Ethan and his parents sat near the front, waiting for their turn to speak. Ethan's hands were clammy and his heart raced as his name was called. He stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. "I didn't wear the hat to hurt anyone," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "To me, it's just a hat. It represents my beliefs and my family's values. My grandfather gave it to me, and he taught me to stand up for what I believe in. That's all I was doing." He glanced around the room. Some faces were sympathetic, others were stony and unyielding. "I believe in freedom of speech," Ethan continued. "I believe everyone has the right to express themselves, even if we don't agree with them. Isn't that what this country is about? I never attacked anyone. I never tried to make anyone feel unsafe. So why am I being punished?" The room erupted into murmurs. Some people clapped, while others shook their heads. Ethan stepped down, his heart pounding. The school board deliberated for hours. In the end, they decided to lift Ethan's suspension, citing that while the hat was controversial, it did not violate any specific school policy. However, they announced plans to update the dress code to address politically charged symbols in the future. Ethan returned to school the following week, but things weren't the same. Some students avoided him, while others patted him on the back, calling him a hero. Teachers treated him cautiously, and the principal barely made eye contact. The MAGA hat now sat on a shelf in Ethan's room, a reminder of the storm it had caused. To Ethan, it was no longer just a hat. It was a symbol of resilience, of standing up for what he believed in, even when it came at a cost.